questions. So without further ado, I will introduce our panel. We have three guys that know an awful lot about radio creative. I also want to exclude them from all my prior comments. These guys are great radio creatives that have done a career of amazing work, I know personally. But they're going to give their advantage of where the marketplace is. So we've got Bob Monachino is the first guy that will join us. Come on up, Bob. How into radio is Bob? Bob's mother calls him Radio Bob. That's a true story. Radio Bob Monachino. Bob has done more writing and producing of radio, in my estimation, than any other person in the country. He has done radio almost exclusively for how many years?
Exclusively since I would say 84.
A lot of spots for McDonald's, Anheuser-Busch, a lot of people that you've heard of, Midas, et cetera, et cetera. It is his birthday. And if you want to learn more about tequila, there is one person in the room that can help you, and that would be this guy.
See, that's my picture down there. I'm growing my own agave plants down there.
Nice. Interesting. I thought that was something different. Bob Merlotti, the other Bob. Bob Merlotti, please join us. Bob is one of the best creative directors I've ever had the privilege and the pleasure of working with. He's worked in Chicago and Los Angeles and some other places. Bob is not a specialist in radio. He has done award-winning work and Super Bowl work in radio, print, television, and now he's actually working at Digitas, working almost exclusively with digital, and so he's got a very unique perspective about some of that transition that the marketplace has seen, and Bob can talk to it. He's also done film work and a bunch of other things, TV, you name it.
My mom calls me not Radio Bob.
The other Bob she refers to him as. Shane Colton. Shane Colton, please. Shane is also a very accomplished, award-winning guy who has done primarily radio. He has done some other stuff. He's done it for really big clients on a national and a global basis. And the interesting thing about Shane is he has also gone to the dark side, as we would refer to it. He's gone client side and actually had to plan and buy and live with the results of radio. And so he's actually looked at it from both sides. He's written it and produced it, and he's also sort of bought it and lived with the, the ramifications of that. So he's got a very, kind of different perspective about things that I hope that we can get him to share.
Will I get electrocuted if I hold the microphone and my water at the same?
I can't promise one way or the other. This is a union shop, right? Okay. So, guys, the premise here is that radio creative is A, not overly good on a consistent basis, there are exceptions, and B, is not fully taking advantage of some of the digital opportunities that streaming and mobile afford, namely knowing who's on the other end of a commercial, a little bit about their age, their demo, where they might be, some of the things we talked about this morning. Is that a fair criticism? Is it not fair? Is that your perception? Why don't we start with you?
Well, I always defend radio in that because the radio listener is captive. It is a captive audience, in your car, and you just can't flip the page like you can in a newspaper or print. Because I'll say anybody, give me the Chicago Tribune and find me one good ad. And you could flip through that whole thing and maybe find one good ad, but everything else becomes invisible. But with radio, the bad ads aren't invisible. So I think the power, what makes radio powerful is also its biggest weakness, is a captive audience. People are wanting quality programming, music, talent, music, commercials, everything. And a lot of the local advertisers, the small advertisers just can't come through with that. So that's why people go, oh, radio's horrible. I go, just about, how many billboards did you see today that are horrible? Most of them are, but because radio is so, like I said, in your face, captive right there. Its power, that's why we get so much criticism. So I'm always defending, the medium.
Do you think it's a great medium? Is it better or worse or about the same as it was over the last 10, 20 years, do you think, creatively? Excluding your work.
Now that I'm doing it, I think it's the same. You look at the award-winning radio, and it comes from, the big advertising agencies or the creative advertising agencies who do creative work across the board. They might win awards in every single medium, and they do have good writers, or the best writers. So the best writers will do the best work, but there's,
I think there are less people doing good work. I think there are less good advertisers. There are, there are always the things that are going to rise to the top, but I think there are much less of the good spots, just because there are, people are spending less time doing it. They're still getting done, but they're not. There's not the craft there.
Well, also clients are giving me, I work with my own clients, they call you up and go, okay, we need to be on the air in 2 days. And we don't have the time and the budgets and the luxury to, let's go out to LA or New York or wherever and do, spend 2 or 3 weeks and really craft some really good spots and the talent. But it just go, fast.
Well, that's one of the unfortunate double-edged swords of radio, is that you can do it like that. I mean, that's the beauty. That's the beauty part as well.
Wait a minute, my phone's ringing right now.
We need a spot by the end of this presentation.
Yeah, to your point, I do think that time's a big part of it. I mean, a lot of agencies have moved away from it because they don't make as much money on radio as they make on other things. But given enough time, you don't have to use. When I first broke in, you flew out to Los Angeles and you used SAG talent, and it was just wonderful. You go, ooh, here's a guy from a sitcom that I remember that now doesn't have a job, but I'm going to use him in this radio spot, and they were wonderful. You can still find people. Maybe you could even argue that it's even easier to find talent sometimes now online or whatever. But if you try to do it overnight during a day or whatever, you're going to be running up against who can I find right now as opposed to who can I find over the course of a week.
So you think I think there's an interesting point there that I'm not sure everybody got, but the way that agencies are compensated is based on people and billable hours and all that kind of stuff, right? So if you have somebody that can bang out a spot in a day, the agency is going to make a couple grand or a couple $100, as the case may be, and it's just not worth their while. They'd rather have 50 people taking 6 months in Brazil to do something that they're going to make millions for. It's simple. It's kind of math. But I really do think that probably is a root situation there where radio, there's not enough billable hours tied to radio creative as there are to some of the other things that go on in the shop.
That's been going on my whole career. I just, agencies don't make money doing radio. There's guys in our, guys and women writers too, who love doing radio, so occasionally great spots get out. But as a whole, agencies will more embrace projects, television commercials, internet websites, print, anything that can rack up the billable hours. I was basically left untouched for 10 years at a big agency going, oh, you do radio, fine, just take care of it, make the clients happy and get out of the way while we do all the stuff that pays for all the bills.
Now, I guess the obvious question is, doesn't that change when you begin with maybe an audio spot, a formerly known as radio spot, and then you have all these extensions that go with it, right? You have a mobile player or extension. You have a website that might go to it. You would have some display advertising. It's not just one person typing away, running and recording something, right? You actually could make whole campaigns that begin with radio because it's got, right?
Well, I wouldn't call it radio. I'd call it audio imaging. What is your audio sound? What's the voice? What's the mnemonic? What's that one little thing that you can capture that when you hear it, like the T-Mobile, da-da-da-da-da, whatever that sound is, that goes across all mediums now, and that's like, using audio to create your brand, your image, or,
Bob Merlati, you are at Digitas now, which is obviously one of the biggest, actually probably is the biggest digital shop in the world. What do people think about radio there? Do the best and the brightest want to work on it? Are they working on it?
A lot of the best and brightest haven't had as much of an opportunity, and it's funny because today I had to skip out, and I'm wearing a suit, and everybody makes the joke about, are you interviewing? What's going on? And talked about this, and a guy who worked with me on a spot for a couple of spots for a Miller product called Sparks. It's one of these like energy drinks that has alcohol in it. The kids love it. And I wanted to, can I just have a beer? No, okay, I'll do it. But we did some stuff that was very fun, and he worked on it with me, and we had a lot of fun. It's one of those things from a writer standpoint. Radio is a lot of writers would tell you it's the pure writing medium. You just have to create an atmosphere, and it's fun with dialogue and whatever. And it's like if there's a picture, you've got to paint it for people or whatever. I hate to use the term theater of the mind because it's been beaten to death on radio, but it's true. But the guy was like, oh my God, the spot that we did, are you going to talk about that or whatever? So now I just did. I can go back and tell him I did. But they're kind of fascinated with it. I think it's a misconception that young people who work in a digital shop like Digitas, and a lot of them are very young. I'm like, the old man of the sea but it's that they don't care about that or about TV spots. they're kind of fascinated by it. If there's something good, they'll say, "Hey, did you see this? Did you see this spot? There was something for K-Swiss with Danny McBride that just made it all over, and that played on the radio or on the internet, but it was the rage of the office." But really good radio, people want to know about, like, what's that like? And when we went in to record the Sparks things, it was kind of a big deal in our office because they don't get to do it as much anymore. It's not that they don't want to do it or whatever, it's just the opportunities aren't there as often.
Shane, you bought radio in addition to writing it. How was that experience, and did it change the way you thought about how you should approach a creative job? Did you think about digital extensions as in addition to just the over-the-air stuff? Tell me about that.
Well, I coming from a radio background, I wanted the advertising that we were doing, purely radio was what I was looking at. I was sold again and again, or attempted to be sold on the idea of digital extensions to that, which from my perspective as a client to that particular for that company and that target, it didn't seem like a good idea to me, but it always seemed like a good idea to the radio stations to push it hard, and I could never figure out why, because even now there are in so many cases I look at radio stations, and for whatever reason, if I am going to their website, it always sort of in many cases the web component seems to be an afterthought, and from where I am, if you're going to sell it to me, spend some time working on it and making it pretty,
Yeah.
So I always look to just for the pure radio part of it,
One thing just came to me, I think good radio campaigns would just sneak out of agencies. Well, no one's looking. Everyone's focused on something else. Back in the our heyday in the 90s, everyone was so focused on stuff. I got things out that no one was even looking. Client didn't care. Everyone was making money and doing their big TV commercials.
Good times, good times.
Good times. And
that's when they sneak out, when nobody's looking.
Exactly.
That's how they sneak out.
Yeah. They sneak out and they come these great campaigns. Like, wow, how did that get out? But today, with everything so time sensitive, money sensitive, cut, everything is reviewed so many times, just critiqued to death. They still might sneak out, but it might be harder and harder.
Well, in a prior session, we talked about something that's related to this, and that is, I think, more than ever before in the history of radio, we have radio stations themselves that are having to make the creative if they want to take the buy. Is that true? Kind of, anybody see some truth to that? Because I think that's probably an issue too. It's not what they do. They're not, they have other jobs, not sitting down and writing that. But it just seems like that's probably one of the root causes. Maybe we're a little bit unfairly criticizing agencies. Maybe it's just the creative product, whoever makes it. But I can see that being a massive strain on a station. It says, yeah, if you want to take my $100,000 order, I need 4 spots, 2 15s, some donuts, some live reads, and a remote. That's that's a tall order, right?
Yeah. Well, one thing we talked about, the web, what hinders creative on streaming is the talent payments. I mean, my clients would love to run locally, but the union payments for internet streaming just said, no, we can't do that. So they have to go to the stations to get the creative, the brother-sister spot running. Like we can't run our main creative on the streaming aspect of it because the union talent payments will kill us. So I don't know if that's something that the union's looking at right now, or we're going more and more non-union to do things that will go on the internet because it just can't afford it.
I think that's a huge issue, obviously, between talent and just the logistics of a place like Digitas, Bob. There's probably not a lot of people in there that have the facility to write radio, I would imagine, right? They just don't do that historically. It's not like that you could grab any one of these writers and say, I need some radio. They just...
No, it's a pretty specific, it takes a while to develop, to make something that's 60 seconds long, or, increasingly now you're asked to do 30 seconds long, which that's a reasonably new development, and it's also hard because you have to put the whole story in within the, whatever the spot is. So yeah, there's not a lot of people anymore that are doing it.
Shane,
It's not that they don't want to.
as a consumer, what kinds of radio in all its forms and facets do you listen to?
I listen to a lot of satellite radio, and I listen to, I have one station here that I listen to. I listen to XRT, And I listen to NPR quite a bit, but have been less lately because it's bringing me down. It's bringing me down, man.
A lot of economic news.
Yeah, exactly.
Here again, I'd like to say that's probably not radio's fault, but it's
I don't think so.
It's not the messenger. How about you, Bob?
XRT, ESPN, Mike and Mike in the morning, whatever. I like that in Chicago. I got into Pandora and started listening to that at work. If I need something quiet in the background, I got my different stations or whatever. And as commercials come up on Pandora or whatever, it's like I don't think there's a difference between that. As a consumer, I don't look at that as any different than listening in my car. It's either something I want to listen to or it isn't something I want to listen to, and I can zone out or put my headphones down or whatever for a moment or whatever. But I think that even though I love that particular website, it's something I would ding it on. It's like, okay, if you're going to have me listen to something, have it be something that's maybe in line with what I'm already listening to.
Right. More intelligent.
Well, I don't know that I'm that intelligent for the Pandora, but
It, not you.
Sure, why not? Or funny.
What about you?
Same thing for music would be XRT, but I listen for the commercials. I'm Radio Bob. I go, listen to this commercial. I know who did it, who wrote it, who the talent is. And
Do you stream? Do you do mobile?
I'll do Pandora through my home system. I never really listen to the radio at home, but I'll do Pandora at home. But I will do news and sports if I'm in the car.
How big of an opportunity is it or isn't it at a creative level to be able to insert the register, so to speak, right into the spot, to have somebody that's listening to your spot and then can click something and buy or shop or get a map or get directions? How big of a deal is that, and how would that change the way you approach a creative assignment? Let's take you, for example, because you're working on Midas, to have a map that says, where are you, here's the closest Midas, or if you're on mobile, I know where you are, the closest Midas is 2 blocks up.
I started working with Midas 3 years ago. They went, totally walked away from network TV, went to all radio. That they did a really unique buy. They did a network buy, but were able to run local spots in all the markets through their media agency down in Dallas. And Midas saw a 20% increase in customer traffic in the first 6 months. They've had 6 or 7 consecutive quarters of growth, and they showed their first corporate profit in 5 years. So they're sold on radio. And if radio is done right, it's really effective.
And are these the folks that won't do online?
And what's that?
Are these the folks that won't do online because of talent?
I don't think people understand it yet, how to do it. I think that's the broader thing, or the broader issue with clients and agencies. How does that work?
That's why we're here.
We
I don't know.
We don't, Bob Merlotti, Shane Colton, we can write anything. You tell us what you want and what we want the consumer to do, to walk in the door, pick up the phone. We can figure that out. I just haven't been asked to do that yet. Because I don't think we know what we're doing, or our agencies aren't. I don't think they maybe have not figured out the value button for their clients. How can we make this valuable to do? Because one stat that I've come across says that, was it 60–70% of all consumers hear the radio 15 minutes before they purchase something. Because you're in your car going, picking up the kids, you're running errands, you're going to stop and pick up groceries, gas, or whatever. But if you're sitting, at your desk, streaming, listening to something, are you in a purchase mode? Am I going to be sitting there like, oh, I got to drop my computer and run to McDonald's right now versus in my car? So that's the
e-commerce though.
Yeah, what are you going to sell if I'm not in a active retail, wallet in my pocket, out and about?
It's totally client dependent. Depends on what you're selling, and it also is. It is streaming. It seems it's a passive thing as opposed to when you're online, you're searching. It seems to me. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but when you're streaming, you're doing something else. You're not searching online for things, and your mind is.
You're doing the office equivalent of driving, right?
Yeah.
What can the radio industry, largely represented here, what can publishers do to make for a better canvas, if you will, Where, you know, are there things that they can give you data-wise that you could educate your clients? You seem perfectly up for doing streaming creative, but there's sort of a lack of demand above, if you will, right? There's clients not asking, or the agency creative director's not asking, or media director. What kinds of things would you need to make that case? Nobody panic. It's just the Superman shoot.
I think, well, I was, as a client, was always impressed and surprised by the streaming numbers. Okay, so you know, obviously be up front with those, and I, you know, as I already mentioned, I think it's if you're gonna rely on a digital component, you know, put some time into looking at what else is out there and how your website compares to what else is out there, what it looks like,
right.
You know. To me, that always seemed like a really important thing as a client.
Not in name only, really walking the walk of a digital publisher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bob?
I mean, I don't know if this is answering the question or not. I mean, I tend to approach a lot of these things the way consumers do, just because that's who's going to be listening to it at the end. So I don't draw a big distinction between if something's going to be streamed and there are times for each as far as the media placement. We used to, one of the things to Bob's point about you're going to go someplace right thereafter, when we worked on McDonald's, a lot of those commercials, radio commercials would run in a car, 10:30, 11 o'clock, 11:30, when you're thinking, where am I going to go to lunch? I'm getting hungry. Oh, there's a McDonald's commercial. I'll go there. If it's an Arby's commercial, you'll go there, or Subway or whatever, and you use it that way. And so a lot of that is just thinking through that thing. As far as a canvas or whatever, I mean, any good writer can get you to whatever you have to do. If you have to click on a button, if you have to mention, you know, if you're talking about quick serve restaurants, if you have to get in what's this month's special, what's the
Yep.
thing that you can get for $5. Here's a box of stuff that Taco Bell does. And any good writer will get you there with a nice stream that does something for the brand as well. To your point earlier about Midas, yeah, I can know that it's 2 blocks up. If my muffler isn't dragging it on the ground throwing up sparks, I may not be that interested. But if you tell me here's why it's good when you do need a new muffler, and build the brand a little bit, I think there's a lot of value in something like that for me.
You know, just to jump in before I let you go, Bob, that's something that is so critical. You hear a lot of agency folks talk about click-through rates and basic response mechanisms. That has, I would say, is 80% about creative and 20% about proper targeting or channel selection. If you don't ask for people to do something, as a rule, they just don't do it. And if you're running, you know, something that is terrestrial-based, online, and you're not asking people to click or open or shop, they just don't. And that has nothing to do with the publisher's brand or medium or anything else. That's just a straight creative drop the ball.
And I say with creative, if the listener, if they're not listening, it doesn't matter what you say.
Right.
It doesn't matter how many offers and names and phone numbers. And I tell my clients that your commercial might come third or fourth in a pod after 2 car dealer ads, Waterbed World, and a Menards spot. So I have to do something to bring the listener back, just saying, hey, we have something you want to listen to, whether it's a great voice, it's a great line, it's a great humor, great music, something great to get the listener back to actually pay attention. Because if they're not paying attention, it doesn't really matter what you say.
Very true. We've got about 2 minutes, it looks like. Are there any questions for these guys? We've never had creative folks in this kind of a setting before. You could look at it as a piñata type of opportunity
It's
if you'd
freakish,
like.
isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Most common, most cliched, most ugly radio imaging stuff that makes you wince, possibly gag.
Waterbed World.
Good answer, Shane. Good answer.
Station imaging cliches to avoid.
Station imaging.
It's just the screamer ads. It's just the Menards, scream.
Screaming. Yeah,
I'd say
screaming
Cars
loud.
for Kids. What's that Cars for Kids spot?
Bad jingles will just kill you.
Yeah, that is a station change.
Repeat the number 4 times. Those are really painful. I have one here. Yes. Hello, Charles.
What are your current testing facilities? Is there any capacity for testing creative, especially with the economics of the agencies that are seemingly obstacle?
We just wrapped up our last flight of radio for Midas, and our next flight will start in January, and the client's going to do 4 straight months of copy testing. Clients test. We test so much. We tested 50 different celebrity voices, creative. So yeah, clients that are savvy in like I said, Midas put all their eggs in the radio basket, so they want to make sure they're getting the most. So yeah, clients will do a lot of testing.
I think we had one over here. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the creative process inside of a radio station. So a lot of our radio stations have had the same process of how they produce creative, and the actual production process is pretty rigid. Can you give us some ideas on how we could actually improve our own creative, since we're producing hundreds and hundreds of commercials a day?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to produce hundreds and hundreds of commercials without having a rigid process, but my first smart-ass answer was going to be don't have a rigid process. I don't know.
That's a lot, and it is different. I mean, when we produced these spots I was talking about the other week, that was, we had a little bit of time to go in and get the right voices and get the right scripts, and the client had to send it through their legal process or whatever. So it's a completely different dynamic than you're talking about. I wouldn't want to be in that situation. You know, as a creative, this is a terrible example, but if somebody needs me to write a radio spot or something in 10 minutes, whatever I'm thinking about that next 10 minutes is what I'm going to have to write it about. If it's, you know, choo-choo trains, okay, that's what it's going to be. You know, so you have to, if you can't build any time into the product, that's any kind of creative product is going to take time to say, is this good? Is this better than that? Which one do I like better? A lot of my career, and I'm sure these guys too, I know for a fact, is doing 3 different spots and determining for yourself before you take it to anybody else. I'm going to kill this one. I'm going to take these 2 in because I'd be happy to do either one of these, and then we'll work from there.
Yeah, generally you don't want to talk at the listener. You don't want to have a one-on-one conversation with the listener. You just want to talk normal. You know, I came across some some quotes. They take the creative brief and the guy rewrites it as if he was talking to his mother or his best friend. So just being really natural with how you speak to the listener one-on-one, and not try, with limited production dollars and limited voices, and just don't try to make this big, huge, grandiose $50,000 commercial with no money. Just be really simple. Look at Tom Bodette. It's just one guy talking. Yeah, he's talking right at you. It's the same simple, probably get a needle drop track of music, but it's just really simple, clear, single-minded, one sales point per commercial.
With a great storyteller, a guy who's wonderful at telling stories.
A good place to start is to, just with idea generation, is to, study the masters, and this is probably an obvious answer because I know in an agency they're always like, yeah, look at the one-show books, look at the award show books. Look at the listen to the Mercury Award CDs, get the whole library, and just going all the way back to whenever it started, 1992, I can't remember, but, and just have people listen to those. It's inspiring, it's a great place to start.
If it's any consolation, these guys are literally 3 of the best I've ever worked with. I guarantee you they couldn't do 100 even-ish spots in a day. So really, the task is so Herculean that nobody could possibly do it. The only thing that I think I heard Bob Merlotti say is that the process that we used to go through, they used to go through, where they'd bring in 20 spots to get 2 approved, and then make one of those. I mean, that's why things took 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, but that's also why, in my opinion, things were a little bit better. Unfortunately, we have to leave on that note. I want to thank my guests, Bob, and Shane. Thank you.